For the best experience, put on headphones and write a comment where you are from and what time you are watching the video. Don't forget to subscribe. Death is a certainty. We all know it will eventually come for us, even if the timing remains a mystery. Most folks are blissfully unaware of when that moment will strike, but not me. It might sound odd, but I have this peculiar ability. I can taste death. Let me explain what that means. Whenever I eat food prepared by someone who is nearing the end of their life, the flavor is distinct. It doesn't matter what they've cooked, whether it's a simple peanut butter and jelly sandwich or a gourmet meal. If death is close, I can taste it. The strength of the flavor varies based on how imminent their fate is, but the essence is unmistakable. My earliest memory of this unusual ability dates back to 3rd grade. My homeroom teacher was in high spirits, so she decided to surprise the class with chocolate chip cookies. As a kid, nothing thrilled me more than a sweet treat during school hours, and I eagerly took a bite. Instantly, however, I wished I hadn't. It was as if I had bitten into something far worse than a rotten egg. Imagine that smell intensified tenfold. Panic washed over me as I glanced around the room, noticing my classmates happily munching on their cookies. Was it a prank aimed solely at me? Did she purposely make a bad batch? I examined my cookie, and it smelled perfectly fine. Bracing myself, I took another small bite. The urge to vomit rose quickly, but somehow, I held it in. In desperation, I passed the cookie to a friend seated nearby and watched intently as they devoured it without a hint of distress. How could they be unaffected while I was in such turmoil? Doubts crept into my mind. Was there something wrong with me? That evening, just as I was about to fall asleep, my mother entered my room with unsettling news. School would be closed the next day because one of my teachers had been in a tragic car accident. My mother's somber tone sent chills through me, and in that moment, a connection clicked. The taste of those cookies and the impending loss seemed intertwined. Even at 10, I sensed that something deeper lay beneath the surface, though the full understanding would take years to unfold. Fast forward a few years, and I was now 14, preparing for my first day of high school. My mother, always the enthusiastic chef, had gone above and beyond that morning. The breakfast spread included fluffy banana pancakes, crispy bacon, and perfectly golden hash browns, my favorites. But when I took a bite, an odd flavor lingered in the background. It was faint yet distinctly off. My father and younger brother seemed oblivious, so I brushed it aside. Then came the news that changed everything. My mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. She was a fighter, determined to keep cooking for the family, but the unpleasant taste in her meals only intensified as her health declined. Eventually, I stepped in to take over the cooking duties. It pained me to admit that her food had become nearly inedible. 2 years later, my mother passed away. It was a devastating period in my life, but it also marked the beginning of my deeper understanding of my peculiar talent. Over time, I discovered that different flavors indicated different fates. For instance, my teacher's cookies had tasted like an incredibly spoiled egg, foreshadowing her tragic accident. In contrast, my mother's cooking carried a bitter, medicinal flavor that reflected her battle with cancer. All the flavors hinted at one thing. They weren't pleasant, as they all pointed toward the finality of life. As I navigated through my teenage years, I devised a sort of game for myself. Whenever I dined on food prepared by others and detected the taste of death, I would attempt to guess how the individual would meet their end. I even began checking the obituaries in the local newspaper, honing my skills as a darkly curious observer of fate. I grew quite adept at it. But what brings me to share this now is an unsettling experience I had not long ago. My girlfriend and I decided to make a homemade pizza together. The kitchen was filled with laughter as we tossed the dough in the air, imitating the chefs we'd seen on television. When the pizza emerged from the oven, it looked fantastic, and I couldn't wait to dig in. However, as soon as I took my first bite, a jarring flavor hit me. one I had never encountered before. It tasted like murder. My mind raced at the implication. I had encountered enough flavors linked to untimely ends to recognize this one, but accepting it was a different matter altogether. The pressing question consumed me: whose fate was this flavor indicating? Had we both played a part in this creation? Would one of us meet a tragic end, or worse, would one of us harm the other? My heart raced, and a sense of urgency set in. The taste was potent, suggesting that whatever awaited us was not far off. I began to reflect on my girlfriend's recent behavior. She'd been acting oddly, often stepping out of the room to speak on the phone in hushed tones. Was she conspiring against me? Could she be plotting something sinister? Uncertainty churned in my stomach. After she wrapped up her call, I knew I couldn't sit idly by. Whatever was looming had to be confronted. I just hoped this unsettling flavor would fade before it was too late. My mind raced with possibilities, and as I braced myself for what lay ahead, I knew I had to act quickly.